Hi there, BUSN 1360 Software Apps for Business Students. I'm Dr. McGrory, your instructor. Today we continue our study of Excel and we dive into Chapter 2 where you'll build on your formatting skills from your study of Microsoft Word, but you're going to see the power of Excel in performing quick analysis of data. Specifically, in this chapter, we're going to do that with conditional formatting. And there's a lot to conditional formatting. We can, for example, display data bars in the cell that change dynamically as the values change. We can use conditional formatting to change the background color of a cell, the text, bold, italics, or color of the font dynamically as the information changes. Imagine that you can see at a glance if you have a sale below a certain dollar amount, or you can very quickly identify the top 10 sales items or the lowest 10 sales items. So conditional formatting allows you to, at a glance, glean very pertinent information. So let's get started with our Excel Skill Review Project 2.1. Now, of course, I've already logged into SimNet and I've downloaded my start and solution files, but you've planned ahead. You've created that folder. You're organized so that you know where those files are, and you always submit in that way the correct work. Just to show you, here's my Excel 2 folder. And of course, there's my solution file, which you know I like to look at. So I've already opened it in Adobe Acrobat, which is the free reader. And again, I want to emphasize that normally Excel does not print the columns and the row numbers, but they've done this so that you can really see what the solution should look like. I'll tell you a little trick. If you hold the Control key down on your keyboard and hover your mouse over really any window, a browser window, this Adobe Acrobat Reader window, even your Excel spreadsheet or your Word document, if you hold the Control key down while you move your mouse wheel, scroll up or down to zoom out or to zoom in or to zoom out. Okay, so that's just a neat little trick there for you. Let's look at this spreadsheet that we're going to work on. This, of course, is the finalized product, which means that it may look different at different steps along the way. For that reason, compare your screen to mine as we progress through the 20-odd steps that we're going to go through. So it looks like we have vitamins and supplements, and this is a recommendation for, it looks like, Stephanie Hammett. We have a daily cost. We're telling her her daily dosage per pill, the number of pills per day, pills per bottle, the cost per bottle, and the cost per pill. And you're seeing some of this conditional formatting. And that's the thing to understand, that this cell is not yellow with yellow or gold text all the time. It changes depending on the values. In fact, what I can see as I look at this cost per bottle, do you notice that these two costs that are in yellow are the highest? They're the top two highest cost. Do you notice that in green, the cost per pill, this is the lowest cost per pill? Now, if with conditional formatting, if we change that number, let's say all of a sudden we made this $1.50 a pill, then which one would be the lowest? It would be this 22 cents, and that would automatically change to that new color. Okay, so this is how conditional formatting works. This is another type of conditional formatting. These are called data bars. And as you can see, the highest bar, and you can see that at a glance, is at 62 cents. And I can see that the shortest bar is at 30 cents. So at a glance, I see the graph imposed on the data, and these are called data bars. So conditional formatting is really helpful, very convenient, and we're going to learn how to do that, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So we know the first step, right? It's to double click and open our file. Step number 2, enable editing. There it goes. And I'm going to make this full screen. But let's go to Chrome and let's look at our instructions. So it looks like here's the case, and as we've already seen, Excel enhances personal productivity, helps us to organize and present. So we're going to apply formatting that we can use to make our data more attractive and easier to read. We want the information out of this data. Making a recommendation to a patient. And I like this sentence at the end of the second paragraph. It says, by the end of the project, the improved spreadsheet will not only look more professional, but it will also support better communication and understanding of the daily regimen that the person is supposed to follow. So it supports communication and it supports understanding. And in the business world, that's very important. Whether you're communicating to a client or whether you're communicating to your team or your boss or stakeholders that you're making a presentation to, that communication and that understanding from the data is very important. The exercise reinforces the importance of presenting health information in an organized and effective manner. So these are the skills, and it does say throughout the project, use the undo command if you make a mistake, and we know that to be true, right? Very easy to accidentally drag a cell that you didn't mean to or apply formatting to cells that you didn't mean to. So keep that in mind, Control Z. So here are the skills you're going to use, some of them very familiar to you, undo and redo, cell splitting and merging. Now, we did merge cells in Microsoft Word. The process is going to be very similar here. Apply cell styles, and of course we looked at that in Chapter 1. We're going to change the alignment of cells, font sizes, font colors, and that part, of course, you're very familiar with. In fact, even the alignment of cells, you did that in Word, so those skills are going to carry over a little bit, okay? What I want you to look at, wrapping text in a cell, so we're going to look at that. We're going to look at all this conditional formatting, several of these items, of these skills. These are all different types of conditional formatting. So we're going to go through that with the quick analysis, with data bars, color scales, icon sets. I mean, lots of ways we can format this data. I would point out that if we're applying all of this, we didn't see every single one of these. Like I did not see icon sets in the final product. So it will be important to compare your screen to mine throughout the process because it will evolve to become the final product, the final report. So as we look at step 1, we know we opened the file. We enabled editing. So I'm going to scroll this up a little bit. We are on to step number 3. And this is where we're going to merge and center the worksheet title and subtitle across these 2 different ranges of cells. So let's just look at that. I'm going to move these instructions out of the way. And we're at our spreadsheet. And in cell A1, that is the title. And we've talked about how when there's not quite enough room in one particular cell, that the information will overflow into the next cell. So you can see in cell B1 that it looks like a piece of the word recommendations is there. If I click in that cell, we can see that the formula bar, the truth detector, shows us there's nothing in that cell. Okay, so the only contents are in cell A1. To merge these cells together, very easy. We're going to first of all select. So remember, we press and drag from A1 to H1. So we've selected all those cells. We see the green box going around that. We're on the Home tab. On the Home tab, you will find things that you do frequently. They're there as a convenience for you. We're coming over here to alignment. I'll just point out that these are some familiar options that you saw in Word. But if I continue over, here's merge and center. Now this is one of those 2-part buttons where I can either click directly on merge and center or I can click on this little drop down arrow. So by default, that merge and center button is going to merge the cells together. and it's going to center the text within that. So you can see that you even have an option to unmerge the cells or to just simply merge them, right? So in other words, it's not going to center. But we're just going to focus on our instructions. I clicked on the title bar in a safe space, not here, but in a safe space to get rid of that menu. I'm just going to click squarely on Merge and Center. Do you see the text in the center of that cell? The next thing I want you to do is I want you to click away someplace, and then I want you to try to click cell D1, because that looks like where the text is, cell D1. Look at your name box. Does it say cell D1? It says cell A1. And in fact, you can't select E1 or F1 or G1 because these cells have been merged into one single cell. That green border goes all the way around, and there are no dividing lines. Like see if I click in cell F2, you can see that there are dividing lines in between each one of these cells. But cell A1 is now one big cell. Now we're also going to merge and center the subtitle, which is vitamins and supplements. So I've selected cell A2. I'm going to put my mouse over that cell and press and hold the mouse button down as I drag to cell H2. And you could see my hand kind of slipped a little bit and I went down a little further. That's okay. Just keep your mouse button held down till you select the correct cells. And you can click the first cell, hold your shift key down, and click the last cell if you want to do that. So again, on the Home tab, merge and center. I think we've done good work there. You see, once again, that's all one big cell. Save that. So let's bring these instructions back onto the screen. We finished step 3. Scroll this up. On to step 4. So with step 4, it says we're going to apply a title style to the main worksheet, specifically to that new cell that we created. They're calling it A1 through H1, but we know it's really just cell A1, isn't it? So we're going to go to cell styles and we're going to apply title. And we looked at cell styles in chapter 1. So click just on this first cell, A1. We're on the Home tab. We're going to go over here to Cell Styles, and we're looking for the title style. Now, I do see in these custom styles that there's one, but I believe that they are wanting us to choose this built-in title style. So I can see that Recommendations is now bold as I look on my Home tab. I can see the font, and I can see the size of the font. And if I click on Subtitle as a comparison, you can see that that was a different font at a smaller size. So the title is now a little bit more prominent. That looks like good work. Save that. And that was step number 4. On to step number 5. For step number 5, we're going to pick that cell A2 that we created. We're again going to apply a cell style, this time accent 1. So move this out of the way, and we're going to select, make sure that cell A2 is selected. Again, we're going to cell styles. This time we're looking for accent 1. I like that we can see these titles on the colors here. They didn't tell us to pick a particular percentage. So we need to come down here to just straight accent 1. Select that, and I can see it previewed in the background. Well, that looks nice. Recommendations, vitamins and supplements, title and subtitle. Save that. And that was step 5. On to step 6. In step 6, it tells us that there are extra cells to the left of the patient name. Maybe I can see that in the background. See our patient name? Here's Stephanie Hammond. And sure enough, B3 is kind of a big empty cell here, and we don't like that. So on the Home tab in the Cells group, it says we're going to click the Delete button to delete just that cell. Well, we could do that and just, so that we can kind of all be in agreement. I'm going to show you this so we can learn. On the Home tab, here's Cells, and here's where I can see things that I can delete. But I would much rather simply use my right mouse button. I'm going to click in cell B3. I'm going to put my mouse, which is puffy white plus sign because that's the selector mouse. In that formation, I'm going to right click, keeping my mouse on top of that cell. A common mistake that I see students make is they'll click and then they move their mouse way over to the side and then they right click. So I don't want to do that. I want to right click on what I'm trying to affect. So right click, and there's my delete option right there. In fact, I have a lot of things that I can do with that cell, as you can see. Just delete that. Now it's going to ask me, how do you want to handle that cell? Well, we want Stephanie Hammett's name to move over, so I want this to shift to the left after I delete that cell. Okay. Now her name is in the appropriate place. Oops, save that. That was step 6. In step 7, it says the patient name would look better if it was aligned to the right of the cell. So right now you can see it's lined up to the left side of the cell. They want it aligned to the right side of the cell. So we need to select it because what is selected will be affected. And on the Home tab, here I have my alignment options. And those 3 lines, or sometimes 4 lines, are trying to show me how it's going to line up in the cell. So if I look at this top set of alignment buttons, do you notice that this one is closer to the top, this one is more in the middle, and this one is towards the bottom? Now this is the one that has a line around it and it's a little bit shaded, meaning that button has been pushed. So this text is currently sitting at the bottom of the cell. That may not be obvious to you right now, but we're going to learn how to make rows bigger. I'm going to show you. You see the shape of my mouse? When I have it squarely on the rows, not over here, not timidly in between, squarely, and not on top of the number, but between, kind of in the gutter between 3 and 4, where you see the line that connects them. So when I have double-sided mouse, press and drag. That made that entire row much larger. Now I'm going to undo that, but my point here is, see how Stephanie Hammett's name is sitting at the bottom of the cell? Ctrl+Z to put that back. I'm just pointing that out, that those are 3 alignment options. And then we have the alignment buttons that you're very familiar with from, for example, Microsoft Word, which is the horizontal alignment. And that's what they were asking us for. Do we want it aligned left or in the center, or do we want it aligned to the right? And we want it aligned to the right. Notice the button above did not change. And in fact, before we clicked Align Right, none of these buttons at the bottom were depressed. And that's because text, by default, aligns to the left. Do you see how most of these text entries are aligned to the left? Very different than numbers, which by default align to the right. It would be weird to see numbers all aligned to the right because we couldn't easily see numbers that are of larger scale. Right? For example, pills per bottle, we can tell that 120 is a bigger amount than 60 and 90 because they're right aligned. So the alignment can be important, and by default, text aligns to the left. Save that. We've changed it so that Stephanie Hammett is aligned to the right. We finished step 7, on to step 8. format the patient name and daily cost labels with bolding and blue font color. So we're going to select the cells and we're going to apply font color. You're very familiar with this. So I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm selecting cells A3 and 4. So patient name and daily cost. Now, I do have both of those selected, even though patient name is in white. They're both selected. On the Home tab, I'm going to click Bold. Regarding the font color, which is still in the same group, and see the red line under the letter A? Well, they want us to change that, so we're going to click the little arrow next to the letter A, and we're looking for the 9th color from the left in the first row under standard colors. So remember, these are our theme colors up here. These are just standard colors, and so it's the 9th one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So if you are colorblind, that might be very helpful. Also with shades of blue, sometimes very hard to distinguish, so that's nice to know. And you can see as I hover over it, it does say dark blue. And they're even telling me, and I really like this, do you see where it says good contrast? So that makes it more easily readable. It's accessible. So I'm going to be able to read that more easily than when there's not good contrast. Select that. You can see the color change there. In fact, I'll click away so that you can see the color change. And we finished step 8. On to step 9. Now we're going to use that format painter to apply the label formatting to the data table header row, which they're telling us. So we're going to click the cells A3 or A4, either one. Remember, we have to start by clicking the cells that have the formatting, or a cell that has the formatting, because that lets the format paintbrush soak up the settings, and then we're going to click to apply those settings to other cells, in this case from A6 all the way over to H6. Let me move this out of the way. I'll remind you of one more thing with the format paintbrush. Okay, I'm going to click in cell A3. If I click it one time, then it will soak up the settings, and after I use it one time, it'll go right back to my selector mouse. If I double click the paintbrush, it will stay as a paintbrush. It'll soak up the settings, but it will stay as a paintbrush until I either click the button again or press the escape key on my keyboard. So I've clicked on cell A3. I'm just going to click that paintbrush one time as I move my mouse onto my worksheet. And I hope you can, the mouse is changing. I hope you can see this correctly. I'm looking for cells A6 all the way across to H6, which is the end of these labels, column labels. So press, don't click, press and keep that mouse button held down until you're all the way across. Then you'll see that all those cells received the bold and the blue color. If you're having trouble with that, then click cell A3 and double click the paintbrush, because then it stays as a paintbrush until you're done, and then you can either click this button again or again simply press the escape key on your keyboard. Excellent. There goes step 9. On to step 10. And in step 10, we're going to add a border beneath the data table header row to separate the titles from the data. So once again, you can see this is about making our report easier to read. The easier it is to read, if your boss only has a few seconds to look at this, you want them to grasp that information very quickly. So we're going to apply this border below our labels here, and we're going to apply a dark blue color here, this very specific one, to the border. So let me move this out of the way so that we can easily see this. We want to make sure that cells A6 through H6 are selected. They may already be selected. And on our Home tab, you might remember this button from Word because we applied borders in Word. Now you really understand what this button was trying to convey. This looks like a 4 squares, and that's supposed to represent 4 cells in your Excel spreadsheet. And they're saying if you selected a group of, let's say, 4 cells or a big range of cells, no matter how many cells you selected, there would, if I just pushed this button right now, there would be a border applied underneath that. Interesting. Also, you may recall, if you click the little down arrow next to it, you have a choice of many styles. And in Excel, we use this button a lot. In fact, if you're an accounting person, if you're in management, you probably really like these double underlines, this double border, because it often indicates totals, that you have like a grand total versus subtotals. So, in fact, here's top and bottom. So, in your organization, you may use this to say, this is the grand total. They want us to continue. You can see, look at this erase border. There's even a line color here, but we're going to look at it someplace else. We're going to go to more borders. In Microsoft, there's always many ways to do the same task. So when I open this Format Cells dialog box, you should be on the Border tab. In Excel, always note all these tabs, and you may want to explore them because each of these little dialog boxes is so powerful, and you don't have to click a different button to get to everything. You can just go into one dialog box and change many settings. So first of all, on this Border tab, I see that I have many line styles that I can choose from. That's really nice. I see that I have these presets over here. Now, all presets are is if I picked, now the button shows 4 cells, and this will sometimes show 4 cells, but I selected a row. I didn't select anything outside of a row. So it makes sense that this would only show cells that are side by side, nothing above or nothing below. But this is like a demonstration window. So when I apply outline, it would put a line around everything. If I did inside lines, it would, in this case, it's just 2 cells, it would show that. To take that off, I can typically just press it again, but I think in this case I need to click None, and it removes those. I have a great ability to customize because I can apply individual lines at the top, at the bottom. If I had a larger range selected, I could even control whether or not I wanted lines in the middle. And that's true across the bottom as well. Maybe, strangely, look at that. I can put strikeouts in a cell. This might be a great way to explain to somebody, this is old data. I don't want to delete it. I don't want to delete this old information, but I want to clearly show you that it's stricken. Isn't that an interesting way to show that? Okay, we're just exploring. Let's get to what we're here for, which is the color. So I'm going to click this drop-down box, and I have this choice of all these colors. Now remember, we used a standard color for the text, but this time they want us to go to the 4th row, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4th across, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is text blue or dark blue, text 2, lighter 50%. And that's correct. I'm going to select that. So now this is going to be my line color, and they say click the bottom border area of the preview diagram to add the border. Now, I want to also touch one other thing. When I click this, it understands blue line. If I later change this color and I try to remove this, it may not remove it, because if I'm trying to remove the color black, it's not the same as removing the color blue. So you might have to really pay attention to what colors you're applying or not applying. Okay, but maybe that's an advanced topic. For now, just apply that border. Click on OK. Now, I can't really see that underline, so I'm going to click away just any place on the spreadsheet, just so that I can verify that that blue border has been applied. That looks good to me. I'm going to click Save. So that was step 10. On to step 11. So in step 11, we're going to click this range in row 14 here, A through H, and it says the data in that row is misplaced and belongs in the data table. Cut it and insert the cut cells above row 9. So first of all, let's just look at what that is. So here is row 14, and it does look like it's misplaced, doesn't it? And it's supposed to go above A9. So it's supposed multivitamin should be in between calcium and alpha lipoic alpha lipoic acid. This was a test. Y'all were testing me on vitamins. Okay, so we're going to do that, and we're going to cut the entire row, it looks like, and then we're going to insert those cut cells. So there are many ways to do this, and I don't want you to stumble through and just say, well, it's done. I want you to know how to do this. So let's follow these steps carefully. I'm going to move these instructions out of the way. The first thing that I'm going to do is it says that I'm going to select cells, let's do this, cells A14 through H14. Now it says we can cut. You could, of course, use the buttons on your ribbon, but I'm keeping my mouse over it. I'm going to right click and I'm going to select cut. Then I'm going to click in cell A9. And this is can be kind of a scary thing, but you're going to right click again and look at this option, insert cut cells. Now the reason I say this could be scary is because I feel like I'm about to delete what's there. And if you were simply pasting, that's exactly what it would do. It would paste over the top of what you have there. But because I have this menu choice to insert cut cells, then it's going to move things. In fact, let's see how it moves it. So I'm clicking insert cut cells. Okay, let's double check. We looked in advance and we saw calcium above and alpha lipoic acid. I'm so sorry. Alpha lipoic acid down below. And I see multivitamin in the middle, and that looks right to me. If somehow you paste it over the top, Control Z to get back so you don't lose any data. Folks, at this point, it's important to understand, especially in the workforce, but you need to begin these habits now, that you do not just blindly accept that it's correct. You need to check it. That's the difference between somebody who has integrity in their work. And really by that, I don't mean that you don't have integrity. You have integrity, but can the people around you trust you that your data has integrity? And they will and they can if you keep checking your work. Okay? Save that. That was good work. Save that. Number 11. Very good. It says important, you must complete step 11 correctly in order to receive points for completing the next steps. This is a quality check. Make sure, move this away, make sure that your screen looks like my screen. Let me scroll down. In step number 12, they tell us to select cell A13 with this note, and on the Home tab, we're going to apply a cell style. So let's do that. Home tab, A13 is selected, cell style, and we're looking for note, which is over here. It looks like a little sticky note, doesn't it? So I applied that cell style to cell A13. It did not cover all these other cells because where is that text? That text is in cell A13 and we formatted A13. It's overflowing into these other cells which have not been formatted in that style. So it looks a little funny, doesn't it? I suspect we're going to have to clean that up because in our solution file, we saw that this text was wrapped. Save that. Oops. On to step 13. The note text is much longer than the width of A13, and it looks odd with the cell style applied. Apply text wrapping so that all the text is visible. Very easy to do. We do this a lot in Excel. On the Home tab in our alignment group, we're going to use wrap text. Let me move this. We're going to make sure cell A13 is selected. Earlier, we used the Merge and Center button on our Home tab. In the same area, directly above it, it says Wrap Text. So look at cell A13 and click your Wrap Text button. Notice that the row automatically expanded. Now, you do want to always verify that because sometimes that row may not expand enough, especially as you continue to do formatting and make various changes to your document. You may need to verify that everything in that cell, what is everything in the cell? I need to look in the formula bar. It should go through the word specified, and I can see all of that. So that's wrapping in that cell now, and I like that. Save that. We finished step 13. On to step 14. Apply conditional formatting using solid blue data bars. We saw those in the solution file to cells H7 through H11 to represent the relative daily cost of each supplement. Now we're going to do that using the Quick Analysis tool button, and you got a little peek at that in Excel Chapter 1 because we, for example, added sums to our formula using Quick Analysis. We added a chart using Quick Analysis. Now we're going to add data bars, which is a type of conditional formatting. So let me move this out of the way, and I'm going to select cells H7 through H11. Now look at those numbers. Can you tell by, we looked at the solution file, but which one's the highest? Which one's the lowest? Which one is second highest? It's really kind of hard to see that. Now imagine that instead of just a couple numbers, you had a long page of numbers. It would be even harder to analyze that quickly. So with data bars, we've selected this. We have our Quick Analysis button. Click on that. So we have formatting. That's our first tab. Remember we looked at charts and totals. Down here, data bars. And you can look ahead and see what's coming. Look at the previews as I hover over. Look at, and there of course is clear formatting. But look at these cool ways that we can format this. I'm going to click data bars. Now, as I change these, the bars will change. That's why it's called conditional. So I'm going to show you, of course, I'm going to undo the change that I make. Let's say for this alpha lipoic acid, this was the high cost one. See how that data bar is the filled, the blue goes all the way to the end. I'm going to change that we didn't buy any, 0. Well, first of all, that's how it's representing 0, is with that little hyphen there. And the blue bar is gone. Control Z. Well, maybe that was very extreme, and maybe that's why the data bar went away. So maybe instead it was 0.5. Do you see how the bar has adjusted? And look at the bar that is completely filled at this point. Let me click away. The bar that is completely filled is H11 because that is now the highest. So this is relative. It's not like, 100% unless, but it's 100% of the highest number. So you would know that's the highest number because that bar is completely filled. Now, we might, we'd have to analyze perhaps further if it was 99% filled. So be careful, but it gives you a quick look so that you can then examine the details more closely later. Undo, because I want to go back and look at all the bars adjusted. Save that. We applied data bars. Save that. Very quick analysis, as the name implies. So that was step 14. On to step 15. Apply conditional formatting using highlight cells. So this time we're going to select F7 through F11, and just scanning through here, we're going to use a highlight cells rule of greater than. So if something is greater than 20, then we're going to have that yellow fill with a dark yellow text. So greater than, let's keep this in mind, is not the same as greater than and equal to. So when we say greater than 20, 20 is not part of this, right? It would have to be 21, 20. It'd have to be 20.01, there are decimal places, or 21, something like that. So be aware. Let me move this out of the way. I'm going to select cells F7 through F11, and this time they want me to go to this styles group. We're not using our quick analysis this time. We're going to our styles group. And do you see this button, conditional formatting? So click on that. And this very first button says highlight cells. Now I want to point out, do you see some of the buttons that you saw on your quick analysis? There's data bars, there's those colors, there's icon sets, but you have more choices going through the menus in this particular case. So they want us to go to highlight cells, and they want us to go to greater than. Yes, I do want to talk about additional things here. Notice some of the special cases they have. They have between. That's nice. They have text that contains. That is very important. Sometimes if you are asked about text in particular, if you use the equal to, the automatic grader may not correctly identify it. So if you have certain text values that you're looking for, a part of it, look at this, a date occurring, duplicate values. How often are we looking for some duplication in data? So those are great, but we're focused on greater than. And with greater than, now what did it do? It looked at those cells that we're selecting, and it just kind of tried to come up with a number that's probably the average of those, if I had to guess. But it's not a number that we're interested in. I'm simply going to type, and you see that that is selected. So since it's selected, click there if you need to, but I'm just going to type and it will replace that text. Now, do you see the preview already changing? So it's looking for things that are greater than 20. And I can use that to verify that I've selected the correct rule. It's using right now light red fill and dark red text. Click this drop-down arrow. This is the yellow fill. And so you can see some standards are the red, the yellow, and the green. Pick yellow. And we can customize that. And click OK. That's looking very much, I'm going to click away so we can see, that's looking very much like our solution file. I am going to save that. I do want to demonstrate, of course, and you can, do this also, but I'm going to Ctrl+Z afterwards. If I click, this is called conditional formatting, so if I click in cell F8 and I type 20, first of all, look at how dynamically the rest of my spreadsheet is changing because of the conditional formatting. But the cell F8 didn't change because 20 does not meet the condition, right? Because we said it has to be greater than 20. Ctrl+Z. Well, what if instead I put 21? That same cell is selected. I'm going to type 21 and press Enter. And now it's in that highlight. You can see, again, everything in my spreadsheet is changing. I don't have to manually keep up with this. Ctrl+Z. What if I typed 20.01, so $20.01? Well, that's greater than 20, isn't it? Ctrl+Z. Shall we test it just a little bit? How about 20? I'm going to put 2 zeros and then 1. It still formatted it. Now, this is where people will say, your spreadsheet is wrong, your spreadsheet is wrong, there's something wrong with this. And it might be wrong. You have to investigate. You have to click on cell F8. Look in the formula bar, and the formula bar tells you that should be formatted. And then you would say, yes, that's due to a rounding error, or a rounding difference is what you would say. It's due to a rounding difference. Ctrl+Z, go back to your original values. We save that. Make sure you're at your original values. That looked like many steps, but we finished step 15 very quickly. On to step 16, more conditional formatting. There might, it says, be too much conditional formatting in this worksheet. Remove the conditional formatting from cells G7 through G11. And we're going to do that through that conditional formatting button, but we're going to clear the rule. This is an excellent thing to know because it also takes us into looking at where those rules are. Let me move this out of the way. And they want us to select cells G7 through G11. And you can see that that is some serious formatting that's there. And on this conditional formatting button, when I click that, they do have clear rules. And that's a great way. And in fact, we'll go ahead and finish the step in that way. Clear rules from selected cells. Do you see that? Okay, so now it didn't clear the formatting because I still have accounting style formatting, for example, but it did clear the conditional formatting. What I would like to show you, because you're going to need this, is if you come to this conditional formatting button, come down here to manage rules. Manage rules. And oh, I guess because I don't have anything selected. Let me come back up here. But let me Control Z. I'm going to Control Z to put that formatting back. Let me select that again. Conditional formatting, manage rules. Do you see it says for your current selection? Now I could change this, and this is what I frequently do for this worksheet. And it's showing me, and look how much of this you recognize today that you may not have recognized until the last chapter. You know that formulas start with an equal sign. You know that that dollar sign means an absolute reference, absolutely from F7 through F11. And here's the rule, and here's the coloring. Look at that. Here's your data bars, and they apply here. Here's the graded color scale because we haven't cleared that yet. And there was actually, it looks like maybe 2 color scales applied to the same range of cells. And in that case, you know, it might be handy to delete it. So you can select, I just clicked, you saw right on the name, and I can delete that rule. I could also perhaps change that rule, graded color scale, right? I could maybe, you know, type in here and change what is selected to, you know, to maybe I need to delete that rule, or I could edit the rule. I could even create a new one from here. I'm going to cancel. Let me Control Z to get back to where I was. Oops, I've Controlled Z too many times. Control Y to redo. How about that? And one more. I had to Control Z until I went to a point where I knew it was too far. And then I did Control Y to redo. So my formatting is here, it's not here, and I have my data bars there. If I'm not sure, conditional formatting, manage rules. Now I have current selection, but I could change this to the worksheet, and this is what you should have for cell values and data bars. And that's all. I hope I didn't confuse you, but I hope you learned something new about manage rules, which is really an important tool. So we did this. We completed step 16. On to step 17. It says you will still like to highlight the least expensive cost per pill. So apply conditional formatting to cells G7 through G11 using top and bottom rules. This is so handy to format only the lowest value with green fill. Remember, we saw that in the solution file. So let me just kind of walk you through this. Move this out of the way. And we're going to select cells G7 through G11. They do want us to go through the conditional formatting, although we did see this on the quick analysis bar. And we're going to find this. It says point to top and bottom. So we have these highlight cells with all different things. Now we're at this next item, top and bottom. And this has always been a little confusing to me. I have to remember this, and I hope you will as well. When it says top 10 items or top 10%, it doesn't have to be 10. We don't even have 10 items there. You can change that number. So always remember you can change that number. So they want us to go to bottom 10 items. And the first thing it asks us is how many. So it does not have to be 10. And we're just going to have 1. Now I can either click this repeatedly to get to 1, but I can see the cursor flashing in there. I can see my I-beam when I hover over that box. So I'm just going to click at the end and backspace so it says 1. The default is this red with dark red text, but they want us to use the green fill with dark green text. Okay. And you see this is looking a lot like our solution file. Save that. That easily identify the lowest one simply by using conditional formatting, this top bottom rules. It doesn't have to be 10. We can put in whatever number we want, and it did that. And if we suddenly said, this is $150, well, then it's not the lowest anymore, is it? So very quickly, conditional formatting figured out which one is the lowest, and it formatted that. Control Z. Go back to our instructions. Step 17, check that box. Look at step 18, it's only one sentence. Click in cell G12 so the cost per pill data is no longer selected. Here's an interesting note about that. They said click in cell G12. Yeah, so they just want us to see that. Wherever you click, when you save, when you open the workbook again, that is the cell that will be selected. As you can imagine, that can be very handy when you are emailing your spreadsheet to different people, because it's going to draw their focus to the part of the spreadsheet that you want to draw their focus to. I could click, let's see, well, they told me, I'm sorry, G12. I clicked on let me click on cell G12. Save that. I'm even going to scroll. Well, I think the scrolling won't be saved, but let's see. Let's save that. I'm going to close that. I'm going to reopen it. Did you notice? It came right back to the way that I had saved it. So if you save it like this and you email it to your boss, this does not look very professional. I might want to control A or control home, so I go to cell A1 so that I'm assured that my boss is looking at the whole spreadsheet, or my customers, my stakeholders. Or if there's a very important note, then I may want to click on that note so that's the cell that they kind of see as selected. Or if there is a particularly interesting number, I might want to click on that. And then when you save, remember, that's how Excel remembers it. So useful tip there. And I am in cell G12. Done. On to step 19. Now this one looks a little bit longer, but that's okay. We just do these steps one at a time. So I won't read through all these, but let's just get the gist of what we're going to do. It says find all the values that use the accounting number format. Well, that's probably a lot of the values. And they have 4 digits. Look, I mean, that looks weird, doesn't it? Cost per pill. That's a lot, for 15 cents, that's a lot of decimals, and we can't pay somebody necessarily that. Now, I will say, be careful about this because certain things have at least 3 digits after the decimal. Gas prices, stock prices. So you always want to be knowledgeable of your industry. Well, what are we going to do? With this accounting number format with 4 digits after the decimal place, we're going to change the formatting to the accounting number format with 2 digits after the decimal. So let's do this. This is so handy. So what are we going to do? Well, on the Home tab, and let's remember we're in cell G12, we are going to Home tab, go all the way across, to find and select. And you're kind of familiar with this from Microsoft Word. And we click that button and we're going to go down to replace. See replace? Click on that. And it says in the replace box, we are going to click options to expand that. I'm going to move this up just a little so that it's more centered on the screen. So I click the options box and I'm in find what, and they want me to look across. Now this is a sample. Formatting is not relevant. That's, this says no format set. So if I'm searching for something, it would just search for it. That's the default. But if I continue across in format, look at this. I click this button and I just click directly on the button. I'm going to close this. If you'll notice, this is a two-part button. If you click the little drop-down arrow, you'll notice that you can choose format from a cell. In other words, just clicking on a cell, kind of like a format painter, to soak up what you're looking for. But we're just doing this format, which you can get by clicking squarely on the button. So in this Find Format dialog box, it says make sure you're on the Number tab, so we're on that, and look for Accounting. So I see the accounting style. Now, we want to change it to be 2 places after the decimal, but currently we're at 4 places after the decimal. So I need to increase this to 4 places after the decimal. Our symbol is $. We're going to click on OK. Now we're going to tell it what to replace it with. But notice that find what, this doesn't say no format set. It can't really, I think it's having difficulty showing us that, so we would have to click the format button again to verify all that. So what are we going to replace it with? Well, we're going to do a similar step. We're going to click just squarely on the format button. We're going to keep our accounting style, but we want 2 places after the decimal. Click OK. So just looking before we go off to the races here, let's just look at what we have here. We're limiting this to this worksheet. We could have multiple worksheets in the workbook. We can search by rows, that's fine. Look in formulas, doesn't really apply to this, but okay. Just for future reference, notice that we could match case. If, certain names, there's more than one capital letter, and so we could match certain cases to correct that. Match the entire cell content rather than just a piece of it, right? So we've got all our settings in place, replace all. It made 9 replacements. Okay. Close this box. And let's verify. Yep, these were all formulas. And with formulas, you very oftentimes have many places after the decimal that are not necessarily relevant. So you want to maybe round those. Excellent. Let's save that. Isn't that a handy feature? If you work with Excel in your office, you are probably thinking of the many ways that you can apply this. At least I hope not. And if you're not yet in your office job or using a spreadsheet for whatever business that you're working in, you can definitely impress some folks with this. And you can also be a much faster entrepreneur, for example, with this. Well, folks, that step 19 was a big one, but it brings us down to the submission. So and I know that we need to save our workbook. I don't think they didn't tell us to have a particular cell selected, did they? Sometimes that is important. Okay, so they don't. So save, close completely out of Excel. Now, I worry because when I instruct, it's very easy for me to miss a instruction. So Control Home got me to the top, and you know that by now. And I've got my Excel 2 window over here. I'm going to take my Excel 2 file, and I'm just going to drag and drop. Yes, I'm ready. Here we go. Get ready, get ready. We can do it. Woohoo! 100%, 100%. So that means you can also get 100% because I want you to learn while you earn points towards this assignment. So I hope the instruction was helpful. Thank you very much, folks. I appreciate you. Onward and upward.